no one dared cross her path except one man who asked, not fought, best Wild West stories. The sun had just begun its slow climb over the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink. In the small frontier town of Redstone, the dusty streets lay quiet. Horses flicked their tails, and the occasional wind stirred loose dirt across the wooden boardwalks. Most townsfolk were still inside their homes or shops, waiting for the morning bells to call them to work. But there was one place where the morning had no effect on fear or respect. That place was Marin Steele's cabin, a modest structure of rough-hewn wood at the edge of town. It was simple, yet tidy, with a small garden where strange, hardy plants grew. No one knew exactly how she managed them, but everyone admired their resilience. Marin herself was outside, stretching her long arms toward the sky as if to measure it. Her dark hair caught the sunlight, glinting like copper, and her eyes scanned the distant cliffs with quiet focus. Even in silence, there was an energy about her, a presence that made people glance away if she passed by. "They say she can walk through the desert alone and never get lost," whispered old Mr. Hawkins, the general storekeeper, to the woman stacking jars of honey, "and she can outthink anyone who dares to try her riddles." "She?" the woman said, eyebrows raised. "I heard she once solved the canyon maze in one night. No one has done that in a decade." "Exactly, mister," Hawkins said, nodding. "No one dares to cross her path. You ask, you might get an answer. You challenge, well, you don't. That's the lesson." Marin didn't need anyone to tell her these things. She knew the stories followed her like shadows, growing taller with every telling. Sometimes she wondered if they made her larger than life, but she had learned long ago that legends, careful and controlled, could keep people safe. On that particular morning, however, a new sound broke the usual calm. The low hum of a landing pod echoed from the edge of the town, where a small dirt field served as a landing area. The townsfolk paused, craning their necks to see. Redstone wasn't a place that saw many travelers. Most journeys here were careful, planned, and often avoided entirely. When the pod's door opened, a man stepped out. His clothes were simple, neat, but not flashy. He had a calm presence, almost gentle, and a polite, curious expression on his face. His eyes, blue like the distant sky, scanned the town with quiet interest. He was Elias Grant, a man whose reputation was unknown but whose manners spoke volumes. He walked slowly toward the center of town, greeting people with nods. Some glanced nervously at him, but most whispered, unsure what to make of a stranger in their quiet world. And yet, despite their caution, he seemed untroubled by the invisible walls of respect and fear that hung in Redstone. The moment he arrived at the outskirts of the town, where Marin's cabin sat at the edge of a low cliff, he paused. He looked up at her, standing in the doorway, and gave a small, polite bow. "Good morning," he said. "I hope I'm not disturbing you. My name is Elias Grant. I've heard stories of your skill and wisdom, and I was hoping, if you would allow, I might ask for your guidance." Marin's eyes narrowed slightly. She had seen many travelers arrive with high claims, loud voices, or threats hidden in polite words. But there was nothing threatening in this man. No challenge, no arrogance, no demand. Just a simple request. "Guidance?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. "Through what?" "To reach the frontier expanse," he said. "Beyond the cliffs, beyond the desert plains. I seek the lost archive. I've been studying old maps, old stories, but none of them show the safest path. I've heard you know how to navigate places others cannot." For a moment, Marin didn't respond. She tilted her head, studying him. He didn't step closer or raise his voice. He didn't even glance around nervously, as though the warnings of the townsfolk meant nothing to him. Finally, she spoke. "Many who try the frontier expanse fail. It is easy to get lost. The desert moves, the canyons shift, and even the stars can be confusing. Why should I help you?" Elias smiled faintly. "Because I will listen. I will learn. I will not challenge, I will not fight, and I will not interfere with anything you say or do. I only wish to walk with someone who knows the path." Marin looked away toward the cliffs, her mind running through calculations, possibilities, and risks. She had not met anyone like this in years. Most asked for her help with arrogance or fear, few with respect. Fewer still inspired the thought that maybe, just maybe, they were worthy of it. "Very well," she said after a pause. "You may come. But understand this, the path is not easy. You will face puzzles and obstacles that cannot be solved by force. Your mind must be sharp, your patience stronger than your legs." "I understand," Elias said. His tone held no fear, only honesty. "I'm ready." Marin nodded. "Then we begin tomorrow. Today, you rest." Tomorrow the desert will teach you lessons that no town ever could. For the rest of the day, Elias settled in the small inn near the town square. The townsfolk watched him with curiosity and apprehension. Who was this man who dared to ask Marin Steele for guidance, rather than avoid her entirely? That evening, Marin walked into town, a rare event. She passed silently by the store, the inn, and the saloon. Children peeked from behind barrels, and adults glanced away respectfully. No one spoke to her. She didn't need to. The mere act of her presence was enough to command attention. She entered the inn quietly, where Elias waited. He rose when he saw her. "Shall we go over the preparations?" he asked. Marin nodded. "First you must understand the desert. It is alive, in a way. The wind shifts the sand, the cliffs hide secrets, and even the animals think differently here. Respect it, and it will guide you. Ignore it, and you will fail." Elias listened intently, absorbing every word. He asked questions, but not too many. He did not interrupt, nor did he argue. He simply listened. "Tomorrow," Marin continued, "we leave at first light. You will see why no one dares cross my path. Not because I am dangerous, but because the desert tests everyone. Most give up before they reach even the first canyon." Elias smiled, calm and patient. "I am not most people." Marin's lips twitched in a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Perhaps she believed him. Perhaps she didn't. She would see soon enough. That night, Marin returned to her cabin, leaving Elias to sleep in the inn. Outside, the wind whispered across the town and the stars began to twinkle. Somewhere in the distance, the desert waited. It had always waited for those who dared to enter, not with hostility, but with challenges. Challenges that could only be met with thought, respect, and courage. And for the first time in a long while, Marin felt a flicker of anticipation. Tomorrow, the frontier would see someone willing to ask, rather than fight. The next morning promised more than dust and heat. It promised the beginning of a journey, the kind of journey that would test mind, heart, and spirit, and in the quiet dawn, Marin Steele prepared to step into it once more, this time with someone who might understand the path she had walked alone for so long. The morning sun had barely risen over Redstone when Marin Steele stepped out of her cabin, ready for the journey ahead. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of dry earth and desert flowers that stubbornly bloomed even in this harsh land. Elias Grant was already waiting near her small cart, which carried only what was necessary: water, maps, a few supplies, and some small tools. "Good morning," Elias said with a calm smile. "I'm ready," Marin nodded. "Then let's begin. Remember, the desert is not an enemy. It is a teacher. Pay attention to everything: the wind, the patterns of the sand, the movements of animals. They all tell you where to go, if you listen." Elias adjusted his pack and followed her down the path leading from the town into the open expanse. The streets of Redstone quickly disappeared behind them, replaced by rolling dunes and distant cliffs that seemed to touch the sky. The silence was almost overwhelming, broken only by the occasional rustle of wind or the distant call of a desert bird. As they walked, Marin began to explain the first test. "We will enter the canyon maze soon," she said. "It is a series of narrow passages formed by wind and rock. From above, it is easy to see the path, but from within, it is easy to become lost. Many have tried to cross it in a single day and failed." Elias listened carefully. "What is the trick?" he asked. Marin smiled faintly. "There is no trick, only observation. You must notice details others miss: the way sand collects, the way light falls, even the sounds of the rock settling. The maze responds to those who watch carefully. Those who rush will turn around in circles." The canyon walls rose higher as they approached, their reddish tones glowing in the sunlight. Small plants clung to cracks in the stone, and tiny streams of water trickled down from hidden springs. Marin moved ahead with confidence, her step sure and precise. Elias followed, careful not to disturb the fragile plants or the quiet harmony of the place. At the first junction, the path split into 3 narrow corridors. Each looked nearly identical. The walls were the same shade of red, the floor the same dusty brown. Elias paused, unsure which way to go. "Do not guess," Marin advised softly. "Guessing is the path to failure." Elias nodded. He observed the sand at his feet. One corridor had a faint trail of crushed leaves, another had tiny footprints of small desert animals, and the last had no signs at all. He pointed to the middle path. "This one shows signs of movement," he said, "but not humans. Only animals. Perhaps that path is safer." Marin looked at him, impressed. "Good." You noticed what others would not. Follow me. They moved carefully through the maze, paying attention to every detail. The sun climbed higher, and shadows shifted, creating illusions of walls that did not exist. At one point they came to a shallow pool of water, reflecting the sky like glass. Marin knelt and examined it. Water like this is rare, she said. It gathers where the canyon shifts slightly underground. See the pattern of the rocks beneath it? That tells us where the next dry path will be. Walk carefully. Elias followed her guidance, stepping lightly, careful not to disturb the natural balance. He realized that this journey was unlike anything he had experienced before. There were no threats from others, no battles to fight, yet every step required thought, patience, and attention. Hours passed, and the canyon maze began to narrow. Marin paused at a point where 3 rocks were stacked in a peculiar formation. "This is a marker," she said. "Those who came before have left signs, but not in ways you would expect. The smallest details can tell you more than maps ever could." Elias crouched to inspect the rocks. Hidden under a flat stone, he found scratches in the shape of arrows pointing slightly to the left. He looked up at Marin. "These point the way?" "Yes," she said. "Good observation. Most travelers would pass by thinking the rocks were just random, but the desert leaves messages for those willing to notice." By late afternoon they reached the edge of the maze. Elias had learned much in a single day: to watch, to think, and to respect the land. Marin looked at him, a quiet approval in her eyes. "You are different from others," she said. "You do not try to conquer the desert. You seek to understand it. That will carry you far." Elias smiled. "I only wish to learn from someone who knows the path." The next challenge awaited beyond the canyon, the shifting desert plains. Here the wind moved the sand constantly, creating dunes that changed shape every hour. Without careful attention, one could walk in circles for days. Marin led the way, teaching Elias how to read the patterns left by wind and small creatures. "See that line of darker sand?" she asked. "It shows where water ran recently. That means the ground is firmer there. Walking there will save energy and prevent mistakes. Always look for these signs." Elias followed, his eyes scanning the ground like a scientist. He began to notice patterns that others would miss. A single rock out of place, a subtle curve in the dunes, the faint shadow of a plant indicating nearby moisture. Each observation was a lesson in patience and careful thinking. As the sun began to set, they found a small rock outcropping to rest. From this vantage point, the desert stretched endlessly, a sea of gold and red. The wind whispered across the dunes, carrying the cool promise of night. Marin set up a small fire and offered Elias a piece of dried fruit.
You are learning quickly," she said.
"Most who enter the desert think strength or courage is enough, but it is not. Thought, observation, and respect, these are the true tools." Elias nodded, feeling the truth in her words. "I think I understand. The desert is not something to fight. It is something to follow, to read, and to honor." Marin's eyes softened slightly.
"Exactly. And tomorrow will test you further."
"There is a hidden canyon ahead, one that only opens at certain times. You will need to find it using clues, not force. I will guide you, but your mind must do most of the work." Night fell, and the stars began to twinkle like tiny lanterns over the desert. Elias and Marin sat quietly, listening to the sounds of the desert at night. The gentle rustle of wind, the occasional call of a nocturnal bird, the soft scurrying of creatures unseen. It was a different kind of challenge, one that required patience and attention even while resting. "Why do people fear you?" Elias asked softly, breaking the silence. Marin chuckled, a low, quiet sound.
"Not the desert. The desert is honest."
"People fear me because they do not understand the path I walk. Most try to use force or trickery, and I never respond the way they expect. Fear grows in ignorance." "I think I understand," Elias said. "It's not about being untouchable. It's about guiding those who are ready and leaving others to learn in their own time." Marin nodded, satisfied with his words. "Perhaps. Or maybe it is simply about letting the desert teach lessons people cannot ignore." They fell silent again, watching the night sky deepen into shades of blue and black. Tomorrow, they would continue into the hidden canyon, where Elias would face challenges that tested not his strength, but his wit and perception. As sleep came, Marin's mind wandered briefly to the days ahead. She had led many through the desert before, but there was something different about this man. He asked, He listened, he observed. That was rare. Perhaps she thought this journey would not only test him, but also reveal something about herself. And so, under the quiet watch of the stars, two travelers rested at the edge of the desert, ready to face a landscape that demanded thought, patience, and respect. The journey had only just begun, but already lessons were being learned. Lessons of observation, care, and the power of asking before acting. Tomorrow, the hidden canyon awaited, and with it, the next trial in the path that no one dared cross, except for the man who asked, not fought. The morning light touched the desert, spreading soft gold across the endless dunes. Marin Steele and Elias Grant prepared to leave their small camp. The night had been quiet, filled only with the sounds of distant creatures and the whispering wind. Elias stretched, taking a deep breath of the dry, crisp air. "Today is the day we reach the hidden canyon," Marin said, her voice steady but thoughtful. "It will test your mind more than your body. You have learned to observe. Now you must interpret what you see." Elias nodded. He had already discovered how different this journey was from anything he had imagined. Every step required thought, not force. Every moment demanded patience and respect. He had followed Marin's guidance, and she had begun to show a faint, rare smile whenever he solved a puzzle or noticed a subtle sign in the landscape. The path to the hidden canyon was not marked on any map. Instead, Marin led him across a series of seemingly ordinary dunes. At first they looked empty and unremarkable, but as they approached a small ridge, Marin stopped. "Look closely," she said. "See that formation of rocks over there? Notice the small shadows and the gaps between them?" Elias squinted. The rocks appeared ordinary at first, but then he noticed faint lines scratched into the stone, almost invisible from a distance. They formed patterns, arrows, dots, and curves.
What do they mean?
He asked. "They are directions," Marin replied. "Not all are straightforward. Some are warnings. Some indicate timing. The hidden canyon opens only at certain times, when the sun and shadow align correctly. You must read it carefully." Elias studied the rocks, tracing the lines with his fingers and following the arrows with his eyes. Slowly he understood the logic. Some marks showed the position of the sun at noon, others indicated where to step to avoid soft sand that could trap a person for hours. "Good," Marin said. "You are seeing what others would miss." Together they moved carefully, following the hidden markers. The canyon entrance gradually came into view, a narrow slit between two high cliffs, almost invisible unless one knew where to look. The air felt cooler here, and the shadows stretched across the ground like long fingers pointing the way. As they entered, Elias felt a quiet thrill. This was a place untouched by casual travelers, preserved for generations of explorers who had come seeking knowledge. Inside, the canyon walls curved inward, forming a natural hallway filled with light that danced from the high cliffs above. Small plants clung to cracks in the stone, and streams of water trickled quietly along the walls. "Notice the walls," Marin said. "They are full of information. Ancient travelers left signs here, but they are subtle. You must see them with patience." Elias moved closer to the stone, examining faint carvings and scratches. They were not random. They were records of movement, of tools and ideas, and of how humans had once adapted to this harsh land. Each mark told a story of cleverness, of learning from the environment rather than trying to conquer it. "This is incredible," Elias said softly. "These people survived here for decades, using nothing but thought and observation." "Exactly," Marin said. "They were human, like us, but they understood something many forget. Knowledge and respect are more powerful than strength. Most people come here expecting danger or competition. That is not what the canyon is about. It is about learning." Elias nodded, feeling a sense of awe. He realized that this journey was more than a physical challenge. It was a lesson in human potential, the ability to adapt, to think, and to honor what others had created before. As they walked deeper, they reached a small chamber, hidden behind a natural stone arch. Inside, light reflected off a shallow pool of water, illuminating carvings on the walls that depicted maps, devices, and symbols of thought. This was the Lost Archive, a place of knowledge left behind by early humans who had explored the frontier long before anyone else. Marin led Elias to the center of the chamber. "These walls hold the wisdom of generations," she said. "It is not just about surviving. It is about understanding how humans can thrive, even in places that seem impossible. Look carefully, and you will find ideas that could change the way we live." Elias ran his fingers lightly over the carvings, studying the diagrams. Some were instructions for building simple but effective tools from natural materials. Others described ways to track the movement of the stars and the sun for navigation. Some showed methods of preserving water and growing plants in harsh conditions.
This is beyond anything I imagined, Elias whispered.
It's like a library built into the land itself. Marin nodded. It is. But the most important lesson is not the tools or the diagrams, it is the mindset behind them. The people who left this knew how to observe, how to plan, how to respect the environment and each other. That is what allowed them to thrive. Elias looked at her. I see now why you guided me here. It is not just the journey, it is learning how to think like them. Marin's gaze softened. Yes, and now you are ready to understand something I have not shared with anyone else. Most people only see me as the path warden, the one who cannot be crossed. They do not realize that my reputation is part of a larger purpose. Elias tilted his head, curious. Purpose? I cultivated this legend, she said. Not to intimidate or dominate, but to protect knowledge and the land. Many come seeking shortcuts, taking what they do not understand. They would damage this place without even realizing it. By making people cautious or fearful, I give the canyon and its lessons a chance to survive. Elias nodded slowly. That is brilliant. And careful. Yes, Marin said. And rare. That is why you are different, you asked. You did not demand. You listened. You observed. You are ready to learn, not just to follow. For a long moment they stood in silence, the quiet of the canyon filling the space between them. Then Elias spoke softly but with conviction. I understand now. Knowledge is more important than showing strength. Thought is more powerful than force, and respect. Respect is the path to anything worthwhile. Marin's lips curved into a small smile. It was rare for her to show emotion, but there was pride in her eyes. You are learning quickly. Perhaps this journey will teach me as much as it teaches you. They spent the rest of the day exploring the chamber, following the paths and diagrams etched into the stone. Elias carefully copied some of the carvings into his notebook, not to claim them as his own, but to ensure the knowledge could continue to help others. Marin observed him, satisfied that he understood the responsibility that came with discovery. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the canyon walls in gold and amber, Marin spoke again. Tomorrow, we leave this place. But remember what you have learned. Knowledge is not just to be collected. It is to be understood, shared responsibly, and used wisely. That is what it means to thrive as humans. Elias looked around one last time, feeling the weight of the history around him. I promise, and I hope to help others understand it too.
Marin nodded.
Good, that is all I ask. The journey ahead is not easy, but you are ready. You do not need to fight. You need only to think and observe, just as you have done here. The day ended with a quiet walk back toward the canyon entrance. The desert wind had shifted, softening the dunes into gentle waves of gold. As they walked, Elias felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. He realized that the journey was not just about reaching a place or discovering hidden knowledge. It was about learning how humans could grow, adapt, and thrive together. And as the stars began to appear overhead, twinkling faintly against the darkening sky, Marin and Elias knew that the lessons of the canyon would stay with them forever. The lost archive was no longer a secret, but it was in careful, respectful hands now. And the story of the path warden and the man who asked, not fought, was only beginning to unfold. The first light of dawn stretched across the desert, soft and golden. As Marin Steele and Elias Grant began their journey back to Redstone, the air was cool and calm, and the distant cliffs glowed faintly in the morning haze. For the first time, Elias felt a sense of confidence that went beyond curiosity. He felt purpose. Are you ready? Marin asked, glancing at him. Her eyes held the quiet steadiness that had guided so many before. I have learned so much, more than I ever expected, and I want to make sure I use it wisely. Marin nodded. Good. Knowledge without understanding is useless. Today is about carrying lessons back, not just walking through the desert. Their path led through the canyon once more, the narrow walls casting long shadows on the ground. Elias moved carefully, noting details he might have overlooked before. The slight changes in the sand, the tiny streams of water that hinted at firmer ground, the soft chirping of desert birds that guided their way. See how the canyon shapes the wind? Marin asked. Notice how the air flows differently in each section. It can tell you where the safest steps are and which paths will be smoother. Elias watched carefully, feeling the desert as though it were alive. He realized that every lesson Marin had taught him was about awareness, patience, and respect. Strength was not measured by force, but by observation and understanding. By mid-morning, they reached the canyon exit, stepping once again onto the wide, rolling desert plains. The journey back seemed easier now, not because the desert had changed, but because Elias had. He had learned to read the land, to interpret signs, and to move thoughtfully rather than recklessly. Marin looked at him as they walked. Most travelers rush back through familiar paths, she said. They think knowing the way makes it simple. But simplicity comes from mindfulness, not familiarity. Elias smiled. I understand. I won't forget. The afternoon sun climbed higher, and the desert shimmered with heat. It paused at a small hill, overlooking the plains. In the distance, the town of Redstone appeared, a tiny cluster of buildings surrounded by the wide expanse of sand. For a moment, Elias felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. This town, they will see us differently now, he said.
They might, Marin said, but you must remember the lessons of the canyon.
Respect and understanding matter more than how others see you. Lead with thought, not with pride. Elias nodded. I will. As they descended toward Redstone, a group of townsfolk gathered near the outskirts, their eyes wide with curiosity. Word had spread quickly. The path warden had returned, not alone, but with a man who had walked her path. There was a mixture of fear, wonder, and anticipation in their faces. Marin and Elias approached quietly. The townsfolk did not speak at first. They had heard stories of Marin Steele, of her wisdom, her skill, and her untouchable reputation, and now they saw her walking with a companion who had clearly learned from her, not challenged her. One of the elders, a woman with silver hair and kind eyes, stepped forward. Marin Steele, she said softly. And you have returned with him? Yes, Marin replied. He has walked the desert with care and attention. He has learned to observe, to think, and to respect. And he has understood what the canyon teaches. Lessons many forget. The townsfolk murmured among themselves. Some seemed relieved. Others looked thoughtful, realizing that perhaps the stories of Marin were not just about fear, but about wisdom and guidance. Elias stepped forward. I have learned much, he said. Not just about the desert, but about how humans can grow when they observe, think, and respect. Marin showed me the path, but the lessons belong to all of us if we choose to understand them. A quiet pause followed. Then the elder nodded slowly. It is rare to find someone who asks rather than demands, she said. You honor the path warden and the desert both. That is a lesson for us all. Marin's gaze softened as she looked at Elias. Most people only see me as someone not to cross, but it is not about that. It is about guiding those ready to learn and protecting the lessons of this land. You, Elias, have proven yourself worthy of guidance, not challenge. The townsfolk began to see a new model of leadership and wisdom, not one of fear or intimidation, but of respect, patience, and understanding. Small conversations began as people approached Elias, asking questions about the journey, about the desert, and about the lessons he had learned. He answered patiently, explaining what Marin had taught him and what the Lost Archive had revealed. Marin watched quietly, pleased. The stories about her untouchable reputation were useful, but seeing humans respond to curiosity and respect was far more rewarding. She realized that the town might not need fear to learn anymore. They only needed examples of patience, observation, and intelligence. As the sun set over Redstone, the streets were filled with a quiet energy. Children ran carefully to observe the small plants in Marin's garden, while adults discussed ways to apply the lessons from the desert in their own lives. The town was alive with thought, not tension. Marin and Elias sat on a small hill overlooking the town. The sky was painted with streaks of orange, pink, and purple. The desert stretched endlessly beyond, still as challenging as ever, but now filled with possibilities. You have changed the town, Marin said softly, not with power, but with understanding. That is rarer than most realize. I only followed your guidance, Elias replied. The desert and the canyon taught me much, but you showed me how to apply it. I hope to help others see what you taught me. Marin nodded. That is all I could ask. The journey is never really over. Every person who chooses to observe, to think, and to respect adds to the lessons of the world. That is how humans thrive, through curiosity, intelligence, and care. Elias looked out over the town. He thought of the Lost Archive, the hidden canyon, and the lessons etched into the stones. Knowledge was powerful, but its true value lay in how it was used. He felt a sense of responsibility, a promise to carry the lessons forward, not for glory, but for growth. Marin stood, offering her hand to him. "Come," she said. "There is more to explore, more to understand. The frontier is wide, and its lessons are endless." Elias took her hand and rose. "Then let us continue," he said. "I am ready." Together they walked down the hill and into Redstone, where the townsfolk greeted them with curiosity, questions, and admiration. The path warden and the man who asked, not fought, had returned with more than knowledge. They had brought a vision of a future shaped by thought, respect, and human ingenuity. That night, the town gathered around the small square. Marin spoke briefly, reminding everyone that the lessons of the desert were not just about survival, but about understanding, patience, and learning from the world around them. Elias shared what he had recorded from the Lost Archive, explaining how humans could thrive through observation, creativity, and cooperation. By the time the stars filled the sky, the town had begun to change. Fear and hesitation were replaced with curiosity and thoughtful action. Redstone would never be the same. Its people now understood that the greatest strength lay not in fighting or intimidation, but in intelligence, respect, and cooperation. Marin watched the town quietly, satisfied. Her work was never truly finished, but she had seen that guidance, patience, and example could accomplish more than fear ever could, and Elias, the man who had asked instead of fought, would continue the path, carrying the lessons forward. As they returned to the edge of the town, Marin looked toward the desert beyond. Endless dunes, hidden canyons, and untold mysteries awaited. And now there were two who understood how to walk the path thoughtfully, guiding others without force, using knowledge, care, and courage. For the first time in a long while, Marin smiled openly. The frontier was wide, the challenges endless, but humanity, through respect, intelligence, and curiosity, would continue to thrive. And so, under the quiet glow of the stars, the story of the path warden and the man who asked, not fought, reached a new chapter. One of understanding, cooperation, and hope. A testament to what humans could achieve when they valued thought over fear and wisdom over force. The desert waited, patient and eternal, and humanity, guided by those willing to learn, was ready to meet it.